Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is your host, Jordan Tremaine, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, we're talking about the box of language. Okay, so I think that this idea has a lot to do with truth, and back before the pandemic, I hosted a workshop and a community discussion, two different separate events, on the idea of truth. And we got some very interesting discussions going. But one of the things we were talking about is this idea of the truth or any complete idea. And so really what I'm going to talk about in this podcast or this episode of the podcast is the limit or one of the limits of language. So basically, we have language, we have communication, and this could be Chinese, English, body language, American Sign Language, whatever other type of sign language. But we come up with these ways of communicating. We come up with these symbols and these words and stuff like that to try and get across ideas or emotions or information. And I think for multiple reasons, it's not reasonable to expect that whatever is in your head or whatever your perspective or whatever you experienced can ever 100% accurately be translated to someone else. Like, even if two people watch the same movie at the same time and they're sitting next to each other, they're going to end up with different ideas because the way that we perceive things is different, the way we understand things is different, and the way we communicate is different. But to back that up a little bit, I think any idea can never be fully explained in words because we're going to talk about language mostly in this podcast. We can do our best to explain a concept or to tell somebody something, but when you try to take a concept, which is a big thing, any concept is a big thing, and we're trying to kind of stuff it into this box, and that box is the description. I'm trying to create a standard version of this concept so I can share it with people. Whenever we try to explain something and we try to put the thing in the box is never going to be an accurate representation of the thing. So, let's say the thing we're trying to explain is a shoe, because shoes go in boxes, like there's shoe boxes, right? If I'm trying to package this idea of a shoe in this box of language and show it to you through the language, I'm trying to explain it to you. I don't know everything about that shoe. I don't know all the materials it's made out of. I probably can't tell you how much it weighs. I can't accurately describe all the colors of it, or maybe not even why it exists or what the design intent. There's so many details about a shoe that I'm not going to accurately convey when I'm explaining it, and I'm probably not even going to try to convey when explaining it. And so the way that we communicate with each other is limited. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I think it's good because even though I love to talk, which everybody will tell you if they've ever met me in real life, I do think there's a point in time where short and sweet is the way to go. And we can't sit there and have full explanations of everything because we're not immortal, and our attention spans are also not immortal. So there is some cause for brevity and getting to the point. But what I'm trying to explain is that I don't think it's reasonable to go try to explain something to someone and expect them to fully get exactly what you're talking about, even if they say they do. I think a lot of people say they understand to be polite, not to like give you accurate feedback. Um, but it's very difficult to fully explain something because you're assuming you know everything about what you're explaining, which I would say is often not the case. And not that you're stupid, not that anybody's stupid, but everything is very complex. And I forget who said it, but there's this quote that says like, if if you want to make a pie from scratch, then you have to create the universe. Um, and we're I'm not explaining everything to you. I'm not creating the universe so that you can understand all the laws of physics and all the things that came together to make these shoes. I'm just trying to say, hey, this is a shoe, which is a very small piece of what that shoe really is and the history of that shoe and all the things. I'm just putting it in this little package called this box and handing it to you. Um, so, in terms of describing things, I think it's good to do the best you can and try to get your point across. But the reason I'm explaining this is number one, like I said before, so that maybe it helps us understand that what we're going to tell somebody is imperfect because we don't know everything. And then also, when we listen, or when other people listen, even if we do a really good job at explaining, because the explainer by default can never know everything. And even if they did know everything, there's another layer where they're not going to explain everything. That there's going to be an interpretation. There's going to be some loss because there's no real case where you can know everything or explain everything, and that's already two levels of information loss. And I know there's certain ideas like, are you hungry? Yes. And then the yes response, like that's all the information you need and stuff. I'm talking about explanations, not answers to questions, like yes or no. Like when you're trying to tell somebody what it's like to get older, or when you're trying to describe to someone how to play a game. Like, you can give them enough to get started to play a game, but you can't tell them everything about the game because you don't know everything about the game, and it takes too long. It takes a lifetime to learn even a good amount about a game, like soccer or hacky sack or chess or something like that. So I want to put this out here because I feel like this is kind of a building block to some other concepts that I'm going to put out later. And now that I'm putting this out, I think that I should at some point record that idea about truth, but probably not because it's the same thing where you can't know the whole truth. And because you don't know the whole truth, I think you should be a little skeptical about what you think is the truth because there's always other perspectives, there's always other sides to the diamond. So I take things with a grain of salt. I think give people the benefit of the doubt. Try to understand. Don't try to disagree or force your opinion in when you're talking. And that's kind of the same concept as we're going over here with the box of language. Another thing I would like to bring up, I think this is really, really interesting, where if I'm packaging my explanation in this box called English, I'm using English to explain it to you. That's the vehicle I'm using to drive this concept over to you. English isn't a perfect language, and it doesn't have explanations or words for every concept that exists in the world. And so if I tried to explain that same concept to you, like in Portuguese, you might understand it differently, not because I am a different person that knows different information, but it's because the vehicle that I used, the particular language that I used, conveys information differently. The words or the style or the history of that language has a different rhythm, it has a different flow, it has a different content to it, and it might have words that are not available in one language or another language. There's definitely concepts that that don't translate well, or they roughly translate. Like I miss you. I think there's a term in French, is tu me manques or something like that, and it doesn't mean I miss you, but I think that's kind of the rough equivalent. But in my understanding, it's more like you are missing from me. Like you are a part of me and you're missing. Like you are my arm and my arm has been pulled off of me and I feel my arm missing. That's not that the same I feel as when English person says I miss you. And so those have different content, but we might use them the same. And ultimately what I'm trying to explain here is the words you use have a lot of power to shift the way people understand the different languages that you have at your disposal. And even with that, you don't know everything, I don't know everything, and I'm not the ultra understander. So there just is some baked in miscommunication that's going to happen. And that's just a product of using language. Like by using language, by trying to explain, I am definitely not going to explain everything because I don't have all the concepts. I don't know everything. I'm trying to give you a piece of the elephant. The best I can do is give you a piece of the elephant. I can say this is what the trunk feels like, or this part is it's like a snake, and then you can be somebody else can say this part is like a tree, and we can try and get better ideas as we go on and on. But the fact that we're using language means we can't fully explain an idea. Like when you have an emotion, I feel like we've all been in a spot where it doesn't even feel possible to explain what you're going through or what you're feeling because you don't have words for it. And you can try, but it's not like you feel like you can give someone an accurate representation of what's really going on inside you or what you're feeling. So just this idea that language is very important, it's very useful, but I think it has its limitations, and when we acknowledge those limitations, I think we can appreciate each other more and try to get to the heart or give people the benefit of the doubt of what they're trying to explain and try and be patient with them and not necessarily be the word police and say, oh, you said it like this, so that means exactly that. Sometimes that's true, like when you're writing contracts and stuff like that. But in regular speech, I think we should try to understand each other and look for the good, look for the path that makes sense. So yeah, I think each description hides some of what is being described, and it also obscures some of what is being described because of the limitations of language. That's kind of what I'm trying to explain. Hope it's coming across. And yeah, I know I'm using the English language to explain it to you, so there's going to be some amount of loss in translation. But the box of language, I think, is an important tool for communication, but it's a perfectly incomplete tool that can never give you the full explanation, because by using it, you're cutting off your ability to fully conceptualize something. It's like you're trying to stuff the shoe in the box, but it doesn't fit. Whatever the concept is that you're trying to package in this box of language, it doesn't perfectly fit in that box. It's not a tailor-made box. And so you may add a little bit, like there may be some extra space inside the box, or you may end up cutting off some of what you're trying to shove in that box to make it fit. But hopefully it's a good estimate, and hopefully it's can get the point across enough to where you can move in the direction of where you're trying to go. So this has been the Perspectal podcast episode on the box of language. Finally hit around 15 minutes. I think this is kind of the goal. I try to do 15 to 20 minute episodes, but they've been turning out 30 minutes lately. Oh well. But thank you for listening. I hope this kind of gets you thinking, and I hope it helps you to maybe be patient with other people and patient with yourself when trying to explain stuff. I know when we have tough conversations or when we're talking about new things that we're not comfortable with, and not necessarily like I'm uncomfortable because the is a taboo subject or something like that. Uncomfortable because like I'm not an expert. I haven't talked about this 1,000 times. I don't have a PhD in it, so it's not comfortable because I'm not used to talking about this. I hope we give each other some slack. We try to understand, and we realize that communication by default is imperfect. So yeah, thank you guys for listening, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.